Good morning, church. This is Pastor Scott from First United Methodist Church in Kirksville. It is good to be with you again this morning. I pray that you're having a beautiful day. And if you happen to be watching this another time of day, I pray that that time is going well as well, that all is good in your life, that you're experiencing God's love and grace at each and every turn. We've been talking a lot about God's grace here in the church, and how mysterious it is and how wonderful it is that God actually sees us and sees our predicament, understands what we're going through because God himself has done so through his son Jesus Christ. So we are grateful and we praise God for that. We worship God in a variety of different ways. One of the ways we worship God is through song, which is one of my favorite ways to worship God. And that's why I like to share a song with you each week when I come to be with you. The song I want to talk about today is Come Thou Fount. It's Come Thou Fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. It's a beautiful song, and it's one that was written by Pastor Robert Robinson, who was ended up being a Baptist minister in England in 1758. And Reverend Robinson had come to know God through the work of George Whitefield when he was 17 years old, when Robinson was 17 years old. But George Whitefield he's one of the founders of the Methodist movement. It was a colleague of John and Charles Wesley. And it was George Whitefield that was known as the most dynamic preacher of his time. And he had a huge booming voice, and people would gather from all over to hear him preach. And he would often preach outside. And he had such success with that, he was trying to convince John Wesley to preach outside as well. And this actually was a good thing for John, because John had been banned from preaching in some of the pulpits in England because of his new theology, this new understanding that God was there for all people, that God welcomed people with grace. And so John was having some challenges with his work in the Church of England, and George Whitefield said, well, just go and preach outdoors. And John Wesley is quoted as saying he decided to be more vile, meaning he would be willing to step out of the pulpit and preach in the streets. In fact, there's one scene of John Wesley preaching standing on his father's grave, because he owned that grave. The family owned the grave, and they couldn't keep him from preaching there. But Whitefield is still recognized as one of the greatest preachers of all time, an evangelist, and he helped this Robert Robinson become a Christian, and then later became a pastor. Well, Robert Robinson wrote this song, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. And many of you know this song. Is a really well-known song, but there's one line in the song that particularly is memorable, and many people say, well, that's a song that says, here I raise my Ebenezer. And you may at some point in your life said, what the heck is an Ebenezer? Who would know what an Ebenezer is? I mean, that's not a word that we use all the time, but it comes from the Bible. It comes from 1 Samuel chapter 7. And I'm going to read a little bit of 1 Samuel chapter 7, starting with verse 11. And Samuel has been fighting the Philistines, and he has had a long battle with them. But God comes and intercedes and helps Samuel to win this battle. And this is starting at verse 11. And the men of Israel went out of Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and struck them down as far as beyond Methkar. Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Jeshanah and named it Ebenezer, for he said, thus far the Lord has helped us. And so the story is that the Ebenezer is the monument that reminded Samuel that God had been with them, that God continued to help them, that God guided them, that God made it possible for the Israelites to triumph over the Philistines with Samuel's leadership. And it was an important monument to that cause. And we have monuments today for other causes of things, of battles that were won, or different famous people within that country and our world. And so monuments are certainly something that are done often, but here's a very simple monument, a stone that's just raised up, maybe a rectangular stone set on end. We don't know exactly what this Ebenezer stone looked like. But I thought about, do we do Ebenezers today? Maybe we do Ebenezers, set them up and don't even realize it. And one of the stories I thought about this was, my wife Ann and I like to hike. And we'll hike in the many places. Wherever we find nice trails to go on, we'll usually try and do a hike when we're on vacation or something. And one of the places we love to hike is in the Rocky Mountains. And when we hike in the Rocky Mountains, there's just, the pine trees, and then the higher you get, there's rocks and hills and valleys. And oftentimes you get to the point where all there is rocks. If you get up above 10,000 feet, all you see is rocks everywhere you look. And oftentimes you get in that part of the mountain climb, and you'll see that people have stopped and they made a stack of the stones. They'll take a large flat stone and they'll set a little bit smaller one on top of that, a little bit smaller one on top of that, and they'll keep building it up until they've got a little tower of stones. And that's actually called a cairn, but I would think it's also like an Ebenezer, right? Because it's a monument to the fact that you were there. It's a much better monument than writing your name in the side of the stone wall, which a lot of people do, and unfortunately that's very destructive. But there's nothing wrong with putting a stack of rocks in a cairn that indicates that you hit the summit of this mountain, or you made it this far. And it seems to symbolize to me that we've made it this far with God's help. And so I encourage you sometime maybe to build your own cairn when you're on a trail or you're out somewhere where there's a lot of different rocks or things that you can stack one on top of another, and stop for a moment and look at that and realize that God has continued to help you, that God continues to guide you and give you strength for each and every day. And that's what this daily encouragement is about, to let you know that God is there, that no matter what you're struggling with, that God gives you comfort and peace. And then maybe we should stop, and if we don't build a physical monument, maybe an emotional monument in our own minds that says, I've made it this far because God is with me. So I like to sing for you, Come Thou Fount, and I encourage you to sing along. And we get to that line, Here I raise my Ebenezer, here by thy great help I've come. Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount, I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, here by thy great help I've come. And I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Well, here I raise my Ebenezer, and I say, Lord, thank you for bringing me this far, and I know that you're with me every step of the way. I pray that you go with that peace in your heart, and that maybe you can build your own cairn or your own Ebenezer somewhere along the way, to remind yourself that God continues to give you strength for each and every new day. Go in peace. Bye-bye.